November. This is the time of the year when you can really feel everything in Iceland slowing down. Temperatures have settled around 0 degrees and there is a higher chance of occasional snowstorm. The lack of traffic and long blue hours give the whole landscape a very mysterious feel. There is no doubt about it, winter has arrived. So, hello from a beautiful November day here in North Iceland. And when I say beautiful, I mean it's relatively okay. It is at least not stormy, which I think it's quite common at this time of the year. And this is exactly what I want to talk about in this video, about some pros and cons of visiting Iceland in November. And as I can imagine, I'll be mainly speaking to either people who have already decided that they will visit Iceland in November or those who are thinking about it. So this video can either get you very excited about your trip or not really wanna look forward to it at all. But I guess there's only one way to find out. And so let's just first dive into pros of visiting Iceland during November. The first big one would be that it is one of least frequently visited months, and there aren't many other tourists here compared to the summer season. And so the chances that you will have some places only for yourself are often quite high, especially when you get away from the famous Golden Circle. Another big plus of November is that it is an ice cave season, which could be an interesting thing for photographers and everyone who loves to witness power of Mother Nature from up close. Speaking of taking photos, here is another thing you can look forward to. It is a Northern Light season, and as the nights are getting quite long at this time of the year, you have much higher chance of seeing them. One of my favorite things about this season is the chance of snow. This is something that always makes me happy, as I think that Iceland actually looks at its best when it's covered under a fresh blanket of snow. And that's also why I always recommend winter in Iceland, mainly to photographers. But I'm sure that everyone else will appreciate the look of snowy landscape too. Well, at least as long as the weather doesn't mess with your travel plans. Okay, let me just get something straight, because honestly sometimes I really forget how much the location and the place affects my overall judgment of what the weather is like in the rest of the country. Because you see, this place, Troll Peninsula, is something like a little bubble with its own weather. And so while we have snow here, on the south coast of the island there might be no snow whatsoever. In fact, you can see what I mean if we check the web cameras. Here is for example one from Reykjavik, and here's another one from Vik. You see, no snow. And yet, here I am in Troll Peninsula with snow everywhere. Before we move to the reasons why traveling in Iceland in November could be a horrible idea, I did a little digging, and here are some of my photos which I took during November in recent years. So, as you might have seen in some of these photos, it isn't always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it can get stormy. And then it of course depends on how bad the weather is. But you can almost always still find something to do. Some examples that come in mind are, for example, visiting hot springs or waterfalls, which I think are a good place to visit basically in any weather. In November, in my opinion, your biggest enemy will probably be the amount of sunlight that we get per day. At the beginning of the month, it is about 8 hours, and it goes down to 5 hours by the end of the month, which I think can be very limiting if you are trying to see as much of Iceland as you can. The only thing that I can recommend here is to be in the car and driving to your first location before sun even goes up, just to make sure you use every minute of light possible. By the way, as there is a very good chance of you traveling at least in some bad weather in November, you must remember to closely monitor some of local apps like weather and road condition. I won't really go in detail on this now, but I made a whole separate video which you should definitely watch if you are thinking of visiting Iceland in November. To be completely honest with you, November, especially the end of it, isn't necessarily time of the year which I would often recommend to anyone. But that doesn't mean that you won't have a great time. And today is actually a great example of that. It is now second day of recording of this video, and as you can see, we are about to have a beautiful day. And it is 12:45 now, and you can maybe see the sun came up from behind those mountains here, and it will go like this, very low on the horizon, and set behind this mountain right here at about 3 p.m. And so here in the valley where I live, we actually get even less sunlight than, for example, if I lived right by the coast. And even though it is a beautiful day today, it is still very cold, and that brings me to clothes, because that's what many people ask about. And to be completely honest, it doesn't really change much for me during the year. I mostly wear the same thing. The only difference in the winter is that I just put on more layers. My first layer is always some long sleeve functional wear, then sweater or hoodie, warm jacket, and on top of it a shell, some wind and waterproof jacket. Also make sure you have your neck covered. And next thing what you shouldn't forget is some warm beanie, and of course some warm gloves. So I'm hoping that I didn't discourage you with some of these things that I mentioned in this video, but my goal was to really give you a 100% honest opinion like I do in every of my videos. In this video right here, I actually mention why I often enjoy this period a lot, and also what could be possible and maybe better alternatives if you want to travel Iceland during other winter months.